This week we're working on the Choropleth theme. It's a fairly simple theme, it's fairly straightforward, although there are a lot of choices to be made. One of them is preparing the background outline map. So I did a search here in Google for U.S. states outline map, and when you're looking at images, and you can click on tools and then drop down and choose only the largest ones. That would be like the highest resolution ones. But at this point I want to show you any size because there's actually some problems that you run into when you're looking at a poor quality image, and we're likely to get one with a small size. So here's something that might be an issue. I selected this. See how these lines here appear to be a little dashed. There may be a problem with this. Let's take this one and take a closer look at it in Krita. So I'm going to copy the image and go to Krita and File, New, from Clipboard. Okay, and then create and take the web version of that. So now we get, it's actually very, very clean. Look at that. But there's a little bit of gray in the lines, so that may be interesting to work with. First of all, let's open up some space on the right-hand side for a larger legend. Okay, so for that, I'm going to go to Image, resize the canvas, make sure that the constrained proportions is off because we don't want it to get any taller. We just want to get it wider. So leave that off. Leave that checkbox off, and then it's 1526. So let's make it like 2000. Ready to go. Then we see the color of the canvas, which is set there at white, which is what we want, and then go. Well, it did it, but it put it in the middle. So let's try to move that over. I'm going to take the transform tool and slide that thing over, and so it's near the edge of the map right there. Okay, and that'll do. It'll then give us some space for a legend. So now I'm going to draw a legend in here. For that, I'm going to choose the square tool, and remember the size of the edge is set up here, so if you have that wide, it's going to be a very wide edge. The fill will be what is in the middle there, so if it's not white, and you want a white fill to begin with, make sure that you come down and make that white. Okay, and then the edge will be here, and I'm going to make the edge of this one black. And then we're controlling the foreground color and the brush, so we want the background color to be the brush color, and then the foreground color will be the fill color, which is white. Okay, so when I draw a square, it should be black edge and white fill. Now a bit thinner, I want to make the edge look something like the map itself, and I want them to be perfectly square, so I'm going to take this and hold the shift key down, and you get the size of the square that you want. Now there are two things wrong with this. The square here you see has rounded edges, and it also has another problem, and that's it's too thin. Up here the fill will break right through that spot. I'll show you. I'm going to grab the paint can and fill it. I think I have it filled with red here, and then I'm going to fill it, and boom, it bleeds right out through there. So we certainly don't want that. We want to make the edge a little thicker. We also need to, I would like to control the edge, the roundedness, and make it square. Okay, that's just a personal preference. So first of all, I'm going to set the color back to white. The fill color will be white. The edge color is black. The thickness here will be a little bit wider, and then I drop down the options here, and I find that there's a little roundedness to it. I want to remove that, and these are locked together, so when you change one, the other changes. That's because the lock is on. So now when I draw a square, holding the shift key down so I get a perfect square, it is intact all the way through. Now this is a 4-connected fill, so it doesn't break through the diagonal. An 8-connected fill program would break through the diagonal, but this is enough. If the corners touch, the fill is not going to break through. It only goes up to the edge. Now if I choose an erase tool, I'm going to attempt to erase this square, but look what happens. It erases it to transparent. It actually puts a hole in the canvas, which is not what I want. So instead of erasing, I'm going to change this to drawing, a draw tool, and make it white. And I'm just going to use the same tool here, the paintbrush tool, and just paint it over white. Okay, so I got rid of that one that I didn't want. Right now I'm going to make duplicates of these because we want to have several different squares in the legend, of course. So I go to the selection tools here, and the rectangular selection will be fine. Just select the square, and I copy and paste, Control-C, Control-V, and if we take the Move tool here, we can see that, yes, we actually have two. Now remember, this is a raster program, not a vector program, so we won't be able to select these. Once we drop them, they're actually going to be pressed into the canvas, so to speak, so we need to make sure they're lining up right away. We'll do it now, and that's not only vertical and horizontal alignment, but also you want to have the vertical spacing correct. You have to do that by hand in a raster program. Although we could go like this. If we wanted 6, we could have done 3. Now watch what happens if I try to copy multiple ones. You would think that I could just copy these 3, Control-C, Control-V, and then move it, move with the Move tool, move it up, but I'm only moving 1. It's actually moving it. It isn't even taking a copy of it. Control-Z, put that back. The reason why that happened is because every time you paste into a new layer. So look at this. I've got 12 layers here. As I was working along here, I've got 12 different layers. Each one of them has a box in it. Each one of them has a single box. So I don't want that at the moment. It could be handy, but I'm just going to say flatten the image. That will take everything and put them all in one layer, which is, at the moment, that's what I want to work with. I don't need to turn things on and off. I might want to take the legend later and put it in a separate layer, but right now I flattened them out, and now if I take copy and paste and move using the arrow keys as well to get them set. So now I have 6 in a row and ready to go for my legend. All right, so select, deselect all. All right, so it is a little bit of a little arduous, and I probably would want to spread these out a little bit more. It's going to be kind of a tight legend, but it will work. And that's the technique. Okay, so now let's try to do some fills and see what happens. I'm going to choose the layer with the map on it, and then I take a fill, and you know, this is really nice because it fills right up to the edge. There's no problem with the gray. It's very clean, looks good. So there's that. Now I'm going to show you a problem you might run into in some cases. Here's another map that I chose purposely because it has some evidence of compression here when it's probably a JPEG, and when JPEGs are saved to make the file size very small, often there's some sacrifice near the edge of high contrast areas, so that's what we see here. Near the borders we have like speckling that happens naturally. Now if we try to fill this, we sometimes find that the fill hits a non-white pixel long before you expect it. You'd want it to go right up to the edge, but it doesn't. So I'll undo that. That's controlled up here for the fill under threshold. And actually in the previous example I had the threshold up a ways. But if you put it up too far, look what happens. It fills right through, it breaks right through some gray areas. So you want to have it, you want to kind of balance it out so it comes up to the edge like that. When you drop the paint can on a spot, it might be like a pure white spot, and then it's like how much are you going to be accepting of non-pure white pixels all around the edge? And the threshold is increased. It increases that. I'll show you what happens if you have a low threshold. You see, it starts to hit something that is a little bit gray and doesn't go through the gray at all. But anything that's kind of gray, it doesn't fill. So or fills only partially. So undo and then bump the threshold up. You see, you get the idea. That's a very important setting. Okay, well, I'm going to recommend that you do the Choropleth map. In fact, I think I'll require that you do the Choropleth map with Krita, the raster program. But I want to show you what you might be able to do with Inkscape when it comes to working with raster image. So I'm gonna go back and copy that image to the memory again, and then we'll open up Inkscape and see what happens there. Okay, I copied and pasted it into Inkscape. We can see the page frame here, so that's 8.5 by 11. We can see it's a fairly large map. I put a box here so we can see that it's actually a rectangular image. It is not just a vector file. Now it's a raster file. It's a pixelated image in the mostly vector-oriented program. We're going to try to vectorize this map. Now, one nice thing about both Inkscape and Krita is that there's a lot of help. Like if you click on the help and you go to the Inkscape manual, that's where I went to find out how do you trace a bitmap. And there's tracing bitmaps, so you can click on it there, or you can do a search with the index under tracing. It helps to know the terminology. Back in Krita, I found that there's a shortcut. You can go Alt Shift B, and up comes the tracing bitmap dialog box, and I'm sure the manual tells you the process of getting it if you don't remember the control keys. So I highlight the one that we want to trace, the bitmap itself, and then you click on Trace Bitmap. And I believe multiple scans is if you're tracing something that has lots of different colors, because each of the colors will become a different layer. So you can kind of recreate a photographic image. I believe that's what that's for. But single scan for a simple thing like this will work. And then experiment with what these things do. But actually, I'm just going to turn off speckles, smooth corners, and turn off optimize, and just do the basic scan, and then you're ready to go with OK. I'll show you what happens then. You end up getting just the boundary. Now we have just the boundary, and if I zoom into that, I can select it and change the color. Okay, so I'm going to go down here and make it. I'll make it green. I just left-clicked on green. Well, left-click is a fill color, not an edge color. Right-click is the edge color, so let's see if I can give it an edge. Select it too, and select it again, and give it an edge, black edge. Now we see what we have here is a single polygon. Notice that we can't go in and select Utah and fill it because it's hollow. There's nothing there. The polygon itself is just the edge. So this is nice for making like a boundary file. It might make a nice layer for streets and things like that. If you have a need like a Choropleth fill, this is not what you would use. It's a center line digitization. Now there are programs that will give you the option of not doing center line, and I think that might be true in this program, but I haven't seen it yet, where it will make actual polygons, with the fill being the polygon and the edge being the edge of the polygon with overlapping edges, and that would be great for a Choropleth map. But there are other ways that you can bring in US maps. One I have showed you or will is taking like a shapefile or an SVG file and bring it in, and then you can just select the states you want for a particular color and grab the color with an eyedropper, and the whole thing fills. So, so this is how Inkscape works with bitmaps. It can make them into vector images. It cannot fill them like Krita can. So for this class, for this map, I would like you to use Krita. It's a better choice for the Choropleth fills. Now, if we were to do it in Inkscape, we could also draw our squares and duplicate the square, and now watch what happens. Since these are vector images, if they're not all lined up correctly, we can select them all like this and go to Object, Align, and Distribute, Okay, so I want to line them all to the left, right, whatever. And then I want to distribute them so the spacing between them is equal. And if we want to have the spacing more, we could just do like this and say, okay, now let's make the spacing between them equal. Okay, and align them to the left again because I bumped that over. Okay, so much easier to align in a vector image. So when you get comfortable with these, you can go back and forth from one to the other, and take advantage of the tools of either one. So I hope this was useful. I know it kind of went quickly, but I wanted to show you some of the reasons for choosing a raster program over a vector one, and that's particularly true for choropleth fill. Some of the other thematic map types work better with vector, but the choropleth fill typically works better with raster unless you have a vector image where each of the polygons is a separate object. And I'll show you how to do that too later, but for now we're just going to move forward with Krita.